I call Stuart Nash.
Thank you very much, Mr Speaker. I do stand in support of the Student Loan Scheme Bill in its first reading. But, Mr Speaker, I'd like to make 2 points in my speech on this bill. The first, I would like to elaborate on why I think this bill is worth supporting to committee stage, because anything that makes it easier for Kiwis to pay back their student loan, absolutely has my support and has the Labour Party support.
It's not a big one.
The second, absolutely, no, I have that one. The second, where do you go from there? Where do you go from there, Mr Speaker? Can that the second point I would like to make, however, is that, as Mr Robinson alluded to before, I do have some concerns regarding this bill because it doesn't take into account many student circumstances regarding working during their holidays, during their varsity holidays. Therefore, rather than eliminating complexity and uncertainty, it actually has the potential to create a level of uncertainty. My first point, Mr Speaker, this bill actually transforms the administration of the student loan scheme and it brings it into the 21st century. Online payments, internet banking, electronic transfers are now the norm for many people living in New Zealand. And one could argue that those who have studied at tertiary education level and have received a student loan are technologically enabled. I don't know how anyone could cope in tertiary education if one wasn't, to tell the truth. Therefore, this fundamental shift is actually long overdue. Another argument is that people who have attended a tertiary education institution are probably more online than off it. And you just have to look at Facebook and Twitter and all these other sort of means of communication, online communication, to understand the level of literacy that exists in this day and age. But, Mr Speaker, one of the major reasons why I support this bill is because it does promote efficiency by initiating the implementation of a new electronic loan management solution which will allow student loan borrowers to manage their loans online. They can look at the state of their loan at any time, from loan drawdown right down to final payoff. And this is good. It's proactive and it gives students a chance to feel as if they're in control. Mr Speaker, it may surprise the House to learn that student loan debt is currently over $10 billion at the moment and is predicted to reach $15 billion by 2015. As Mr Foss said, that's a lot of money. Over 500,000 New Zealanders have a student loan and the average student loan debt is over $11,000. Medical students, however, graduate with a loan of around about $75,000. And 15% of student loan debt holders live overseas. However, 30% of all students in payment arrears live overseas. I think, Mr Speaker, that this system will help those living overseas and maybe out of contact or hard for the IRD to contact. This will make it easier for them to manage their student loan liability and their responsibilities. One of the reasons I support this bill is because the IRD believes that the new system will increase student loan receipts by up to $22 million a year by 2014, and that is a good thing. Mr Speaker, most student loan processes are paper-based. Electronic tax services currently offer what they do is they simply convert paper processes into an electronic environment. The student loan repayment system is overlaid on an electronic system designed for tax collection. It's therefore difficult, it's expensive to administer, requires significant resources to address a whole lot of errors, and the risks to the current system are increasing with the growing number of borrowers. As mentioned, there are now 500,000 New Zealanders with a student loan. The implementation of a new electronic loan management solution will offer borrowers the advantages of an electronic environment and allow the IRD to deliver improved services to all borrowers. And I have no doubt that there is no one here who doesn't think it is a good idea, actually I doubt anyone would think it's not a good idea that the IRD improves services to borrowers. An electronic environment will give borrowers services tailored to suit their specific needs and the ability to assess relevant personal information and make it easier to manage their loans with a greater level of certainty. Now, I'll just list 5 benefits of an electronic environment for borrowers. The first one is increased certainty and reduced compliance costs. The second one is a reduction in the number of contacts that have to be made and an increase in the ease in which borrowers can communicate with the IRD. The third one is improved quality of information for both borrowers and the Inland Revenue Department. The fourth one is faster processing times by the IRD. And finally, a more prompt and accurate response to borrowers. But, Mr Speaker, there is a second point that I would like to make when I'm talking about this bill, and it's a fundamental problem that, as mentioned, my colleague Mr Robinson outlined. This is the bill replaces the annual assessment, which sits at around about $19,000 for the vast majority of borrowers whose income is largely from salary and wages only with a pay period assessment. Now, quite simply, this means that if a student earns over $367 a week, they will automatically start paying back their student loan. The problem with this is if a student is in the middle of his or her tertiary course and earning money during the university or polytechnic, earning money during the holidays to pay for their rent or food, etc., let alone their tuition fees for the following year, this is totally counterproductive. Now, the reason students work is to earn money, so they don't have to borrow so much. And yet what this bill proposes, or how it's being drafted at the moment, is that it's taking money from students before they have finished their courses, therefore forcing them to borrow more. It's a sort of insidious money go-round. Now, Mr Speaker, I can only conclude that this is one of those unintended consequences that sneaks into bills only to be fettered out by diligent opposition MPs who obviously have a slightly better understanding of economics than those in the government. As it stands, the logic behind this section of the bill is flawed, and it will have to be tidied up by the Finance and Expenditure Select Committee. And, Mr Speaker, I think you heard the Chair of that committee, Mr Foss, acknowledge that this is an issue that we will tidy up during the committee's hearing of the bill. Mr Speaker, during my years as a student, I had many jobs. I'd always had a job during the university holidays. It was either pruning pine trees, working in wool stores, in the freezer at the freezing works, labouring on building sites, both here and in Australia. Great times in hindsight, I can tell you. But it was hard enough paying off end-of-year overdrafts, let alone having to make student loan repayments. And I hope the Minister sees the sort of dilemma here that we're putting forward and that it will be addressed. The Act does contain some square-up provisions, but instead of making it easier for students, in fact, it makes it more difficult. And it adds another level of complexity to the whole situation. And it's a level of complexity that is not needed, and it can be avoided, and provisions should be in place to ensure that it is. I do understand that the repayment method is being simplified to avoid end-of-year square-ups for most borrowers, and late repayment penalties are also being simplified and eased. And I like this because all these changes will hopefully make it a lot easier for the student loan system to work more efficiently and make it easier for borrowers to repay debt, particularly overseas borrowers who have significantly lower repayment rates. And having sat in the Finance and Expenditure Select Committee for over 18 months, nearly 2 years now, I know and I understand the problem that the IRD has in actually making contact with young New Zealanders who are overseas, usually in the UK, earning money, working in pubs, quite transient a lot of the time. What this does is it moves the responsibility back on to the student. And the bottom line is when they took out a loan, they have a responsibility to pay that loan back. However, if we can fix up this one issue that I've just outlined, I'm sure that Labor will support this bill all the way through. In conclusion, Mr Speaker, I've talked about the importance of communicating important information, to a group of technologically enabled taxpayers, about the importance of an enabling system that allows people to better manage their student loan in a timely and affordable manner. Most important. I've also talked about the importance of rectifying a situation in the bill that penalises students who work in the holidays to earn money to pay for their further education. I am sure that, as mentioned, this was an unintended consequence. It is easily rectified. We will do this in the Finance and Expenditure Select Committee. It was picked up by Labor because we understand economics, we understand business, we understand the sort of dilemmas that a lot of these students face. It will be sorted out. This aside, I'm broadly supportive of the bill and certainly supportive of the principles it addresses. So I commend this bill to the House. Thank you.